What's up, everybody? How you doing today? My name is Paul DiNuzzo, or PLD, or even Paulie D. Not the one from Jersey Shore, though.
What's up, everyone? I'm Richard-Erik Jarvi, and together we're Class Action. What is Class Action?
Class Action. Class Action is our show here on the Action Industries channel, and this is our debut episode. Well, at least as far as you can tell. We've actually done about 8 or so test runs.
This is the 9th episode?
Maybe the 9th episode, really. We've kind of been tweaking the whole concept. We think we finally got something we can show, and I'm excited about it. And what do? Well, we take a look at a film. Could be any film, new film, sometimes an old film, because Jarvi can't see a new film in Estonia.
Hey.
Not your fault. Not your fault you live there. But it is what it is. But it could be a new film, old film, whatever it is. We'll discuss it, give some brief thoughts, give a brief review. It will be a spoiler review, but not necessarily a deep dive, because the meat of the show is what happens next. It's inspired by that film. We will go into what we call the Class Action Brief of the Week.
Now, the Class Action Brief of the Week, like you said, is the meat of the show. It's the main topic, and it usually ties into the review. So this is where we take two opposing subjects. It could be like movies, it could be franchises or actors or directors. And with the help of 5 categories, we decide which is the winner.
And this week's Class Action Brief of the Week will be Terminator versus Alien. So excited. But that's right. That's going to come later. First, let's mention where we are on. We are on the Action Industries channel, the home of all things Ben Bateman and Andrew Guy, 2 wonderful guys who are responsible for some such wonderful content that you view. The Action Guys, Action Reviews, that are in the Movie Trivia Schmodown, and of course, their baby, the Action Movie Anatomy show on the Popcorn Talk Network, which is over 200 now episodes. And speaking of which, what did they cover this week?
Like we will be giving a review, they did already a deep dive into Terminator Dark Fate. So that was an awesome episode. Unfortunately, I didn't get to watch live, but there were some pretty awesome moments, and they loved the movie way more than I thought they were going to.
In fact, they did, and what's really interesting to me is that they brought up a topic about fans of the franchise versus more casual fans that I think really made a good point, which we'll get into a little bit later on in our discussion, I think.
Yeah, it was Eddie who has his podcast Terminator 101, I think it's called.
And now it's
just
Eddie
101
Green
now. Yeah, that's right. So he's a great dude. Go definitely check him out as well.
Old school Action Army individual. So really like him. So what was your favorite portion of AMA this week? I have a feeling it wasn't having to do with actual Terminator Dark Fate, but this is just my my own little thoughts on knowing you.
Well, since you brought it up, it could finally be happening. It's the bitch. It's Pearl Harbor. I cannot believe they might be doing Pearl Harbor. Not might, they're going to. Come on, Midway isn't better than Pearl Harbor.
Midway is a cheap rip-off of Pearl Harbor. It's a carbon copy.
Yeah.
Is it really going to happen?
I honestly can't believe this might be happening.
Is it really going to happen?
It has to. It has to. Really, the stars are aligned, man. The stars are aligned.
If Ben Bateman has his way, he will do it, I think. That's the thing. But he's really going to have to convince Andrew, who has no interest in doing the film whatsoever. It was actually my favorite part of the show, too, partially because I know that you've been pushing for it for at least 3 years now. It's got to happen at some point. I think at one point, like sudden death for Matthew Kearns is going to happen. It's just a matter of when.
It happened for him.
A quick preview also this week. They are doing on the Action Guys. They are going to be discussing. Well, they have discussed, and going to come out later today on the Patreon, and coming out Friday for the general public. The Action Guys will be discussing Sylvester Stallone versus Arnold Schwarzenegger.
That's right.
That's always an interesting deep dive for me. So I can't wait. I haven't got a chance to listen to it yet. I think it's going to be great, though.
But do you think we're ready to dive into our review?
Let's do it. We are going to be discussing the new and slightly polarizing franchise entry in the Terminator franchise, Terminator Dark Fate. Let's go with you, Richard. What did you think of the film?
I how to say this? I don't want to come off too negative. I think, because I'm not negative, I actually really like the movie. But Dark Fate is a very capable and worthy sequel to the classic T2. And Tim Miller is a really special director. You can definitely feel his fingers in this pie. Like T3, Salvation, and Genesis can take a step back and relax because they are considered third tier now. That's what I feel like, because we got the two classic movies. I feel like this is probably the next best movie in the franchise. I think you probably agree with me.
I do. I really want to go back and rewatch some of the other ones, because I know that I didn't dislike. I haven't seen them in a couple years, I'll be honest with you, but I never disliked 3 or Salvation nearly as much as a lot of other people do.
Yeah, I think Salvation has its moments, definitely. But like that being said, it feels like this movie, like Dark Fate, it didn't really need to exist. And yeah, so go ahead.
I will say, it's actually I'm going to touch on this now in my review, and then it's going to be part of the later part of the brief of the week as well. Part of the issue I have for the film is that it ends up being like almost a lot of their Terminators are. It's a soft reboot of the first one. It's a formula that kind of happens. We have somebody from the future, a robot gets sent back, and a savior gets sent back to protect somebody, and hilarity ensues. Not hilarity, but action-packed, action-packed crashes, explosions, everything else ensues. But does it make it become tired? A little bit. It's still fun. Still a whole lot of fun. Still a lot of action.
It is. It really is. It's a fun ride. The whole movie is a fun ride.
But at the same time, I kind of feel like we've done it before. So in a way, yes, it doesn't need to exist. No. But you're right. It definitely, I think Andrew Guy made a good point, actually. If it was just T1, T2, and Dark Fate, it'd be considered a great trilogy, I think. Even though Dark Fate is definitively lesser than 1 and 2, it still would have made for a good fun sequel. But I did enjoy the film quite a bit.
It was a very competent action movie, and I was locked in for the entire ride. Honestly, it felt like a ride.
Yeah,
I was locked in. Like the first half of the movie was freaking amazing. Like the first half, like the first chase scene, the warehouse fight. I was like, holy crap, this is going to be amazing.
Well, let's talk about the first scene in the movie, because that seems to be the most polarizing scene of the whole film. I will say, bringing up what Andrew Guy had mentioned before also, was there's a difference between fans of the franchise versus more casual fans. And there's no scene in the film that shows that better than that first scene, where spoilers, I said we are going to spoilers, they kill off John Connor.
I thought it was a dream sequence. I honestly thought it was a dream sequence when it first popped on screen.
And I had 2 thoughts, like warring in my head at the same time. My first thought was, holy shit, that's ballsy. That's ballsy. You just took the entire franchise's mythology and said, nope, we're like almost like Luke in Last Jedi, throwing it over your shoulder. We're starting something new. And I didn't like it to a degree, because I'm like, I had some investment in that mythology. I'm like, well, so basically, does that invalidate Terminator 1 and 2 now at this point? Like, does that make it invalid? Because that was the whole point, was saving John Connor. Yet here it is, John Connor's dying anyway. But then at the same time, I'm thinking, well, Terminator 1 and Terminator 2 still happened, and they did stop Judgment Day, which is what they leaned into. They stopped Judgment Day initially. And that's made for a very ambitious possibilities. Also, the possibilities are open wide. This is a whole new world we haven't seen before, which is something that I think the Terminator franchise needed.
But I got a question for you. Is it too different? It's not different. It's not Skynet. It's just Legion. But that's exactly in the same slot that it goes on.
And that's what I was leading into. The opening had that ambition, but the way it unfolded, it didn't do much with it. It just replaced Legion, Skynet with Legion, replaces John Connor with Danny. And I got to tell you, I was not a fan of Danny. It just seemed she didn't do anything for me as far as Leader of the Resistance. I can't tell you exactly why. The actress was fine, but something about her, like when they did the future sequence, they tried to have her like age up, and
but she wasn't aged. It was weird.
It just didn't work, and she wasn't badass enough. There wasn't enough of a difference between the current Danny and the future Danny. But on the flip side, going back to the positive, Mackenzie Davis as Grace was
Holy,
phenomenal.
she's by far the best thing in the movie.
I
By far.
will say that Sarah Connor is second, a close second for me. But Mackenzie Davis, I've loved her in everything I've seen. I saw Tully. I saw she's in Blade Runner 2049.
Yeah, she's in Blade Runner, and she was in That Awkward Moment, which I actually enjoyed her. And it was this rom-com.
Not seen that one yet, but I will because I really like her. I think she has great talent, and she showed up this one.
She was so badass.
I wish they kept her around. The fact that she died, I thought that was the worst. I mean, Sarah Connor probably could have gone given her age or something, but it seemed like Mackenzie Davis could have stuck around and there could have had a twosome at the end that I might have looked forward to seeing what would happen next with her life.
Yeah, but the ending, it was so emotional. It had so much like gravitas, this moment when she died. So it was very like that weighed on me, and it had an effect, and it left me almost like emotionally scarred in a way. So sad to see her go. But at the same time, that's what gave this movie so much heart.
Yeah, I could give you that.
And they can bring her back because she's alive as her younger self,
right?
So they can rewrite the future again if they wanted to. There's possibilities.
Well, there's always possibilities whether they can do it successfully or they can do it where it makes sense or is not like invalidating the past movies. It's always up to question. The one question I said before we wrap up our review is how did you feel about Arnold in this?
Oh, actually, he was pretty damn good. He's the best himself. Well, Salvation, he was only CGI'd, right? Genesis,
yeah,
he wasn't great in Genesis, but this is like Carl. Carl is freaking hilarious, and it was he made fun of himself a little bit, and it was perfect. And he almost like developed a soul, which was like, oh, I don't know, but he kind of owned it. So
I thought it was definitely an interesting take on it. The whole idea that he developed the conscience over the years. It was a slightly different. You'd never seen this version of the Terminator before. It was definitely a little bit self-aware, which I liked, but it wasn't too self-aware where it ruined it. It didn't ruin it. It was just kind of just enough. Like the moment where he had the sunglasses, and he's like,
Yeah. The sunglasses. That was the tipping point.
And I love the idea, like the I'm very efficient at cleaning diapers, changing diapers, which is so
drapes. Oh, diapers as well. That's right.
I do drapes. Yeah, that was great. The movie had some great funny moments. I mean, I did love that. I loved my favorite line in the whole movie was when Grace they're hanging off the Hoover the dam there or whatever, and Grace tells Sarah and Danny to buckle up, and Sarah just goes, "Yeah, because otherwise it'd be dangerous." I love little bits of humor which were good. You know, I do want to bring up one more quick thing about the movie. How did you feel about Gabriel Luna, the actual the Terminator, the bad guy?
I think he was menacing. I think he was menacing enough, and I kind of like the fact that he was this. They kind of used this thing against him, which I like, that he's a Terminator programmed to do only one thing, and that's to kill the girl. And that was also his downfall, because they were fighting him, and as soon as he saw the girl, he was like, he's like a freight train. There's nothing else. He's just tunnel vision trying to kill her. And that was how they got to him, in a way. He was like, oh, I'm like distracted now, only going for her. I kind of like that. It showed that this Terminator will stop at nothing to get to her, which is kind of reminiscent to T2.
Right. Yeah. I don't disagree. I did have a little bit of problem with his look. It just sometimes look didn't intimidate me, so I kind of had a hard time because he's such a scrawny little, almost like a scrawny little kid in a way, compared to like Arnold Schwarzenegger. You know, as coming as the.
He was so calm. That's what I loved about him. He was like he kind of reminded me of the T-1000, sort of almost like a wink. Had like a wink when he talked, and sort of like I like the fact that it makes him scarier.
I will say that he grew up. My initial thoughts from the trailer and from the first part of the movie, I kind of wasn't sold. But he did do a great job, like working against the fact that he wasn't very intimidating looking as a person. So he did grow on me, and I did appreciate it at the end. I just want to get that thoughts. One last thing.
What would you rate the movie?
That's a good question.
How would you rate the movie?
I usually go on a scale of 1 to 5 stars. And I think
1 to 5. Let's stick to that.
But I've never wanted more to go to a 0.75 because I'm kind of between 3.5 and 4. I want to go 3.75. I liked so much about it. I think I got to settle. The more I think about it, I got to settle down to about a 3.5. I think
That's exactly where I am as well.
There's so much good, but there's also so much that was just a little stale to me. So
totally agreed.
But we have one more thing we have to do in this review. A special subject we always mention on Class Action. Some people who know me will not be surprised at this whatsoever. Some people actually will be very annoyed, but will groan a little bit audibly. I know it's like Jake Yakoveta, if he's listening, will go, oh. But the segment's called What Would Ed Harris Play? Ed Harris, my favorite actor of all time. I like to insert him into any movie I can find because I think he makes any movie better. I've watched all 79 of his films, and I've never seen him mail in one performance. He's made bad films okay, and he's made good films great. So we take one of two things. I actually end up usually doing both. We put Ed Harris into a role that's currently in the film, and or you could write a new role for Ed Harris to play that would have enhanced the whole film in some way. So do you have one this week, Richard?
So I totally remember to do this. I did not forget.
Every week.
I never forget. But I kind of want to piggyback on your thought when you asked me about Gabriel Luna. Was his name right?
Yes, Gabriel Luna.
So I think I'd have to go with the Terminator, like, because he has an even more menacing look, and he can be like this calm but have this like dead in his eyes, sort of just like totally tunneled into completing his mission. So I'm kind of picking the easy way out in this, but I'd have him as the villain in this.
I will not disagree with you. The only reason I have any hesitation at all is only because of Ed's advancing age at this point. Now, if there's Ed Harris in his prime, I think he would make an awesome Terminator for exactly those reasons. He's got menace galore. He has these like ice blue cool eyes. Almost the guy, his character in Westworld is almost similar to a Terminator in a way. I don't know if you've seen that. But so I like the choice overall. I have two choices. If I was going to slide him into an existing character, I probably would have put him as the Major, the one they try to get the EMP from. That got
totally
killed.
blanking on him.
He wasn't in the film very long. When they were looking to get weapons for the movie to trap the Terminator and to put the EMP off to kill him. Sarah Connor went to her contact to get the EMP from the military, and he ended up dying when they tried to get the plane. Anyway, because he always has gravitas as a military character, because General Hummel's always fresh in our mind. We always love General Hummel. But my more favorite one I was going to choose was my choice this week would be to insert him as another Terminator hunter. Into that, because they opened this whole can of worms. Not necessarily boyfriend, but maybe someone because they opened up the content. There was more Terminators that were sent back, so there might be more Carls out there. People like Carl that are like Terminators that don't know what to do with themselves or whatever. So is Linda Hamilton the only one? Sarah Connor the only one that's hunting down, or is there somebody else who had some kind of experience that we don't even know about yet? And so Sarah Connor every once in a while has a contact with him. He comes some kind of grizzled Terminator hunter that she needs to go with and find him to help protect at some point. I think it could have been a cool.
I like this better.
Could have had a nice little subject. Maybe even have a spinoff at some point. So that's it. But we are running very long on our review today. We should try to be brief on our review. So now we are going to break into the meat of the show. I keep saying the meat of the show. That we kind of run into it. I don't know if that's a good thing or not, but the class action brief of the week.
Court's in session.
Court is in session. We are your judge, jury, executioners, and anything else involved. I am the court.
You can't handle the truth.
The Terminator franchise, as we've seen a poster for, we're going to break in another classic franchise, Aliens, which is interesting because it's always been Predator versus Aliens, but we're saying no. We want to see Terminator versus.
I think it's only fair that we compare it with Alien and Terminator, because if you think about it, they've got such similar paths. First two movies are by James Cameron. Like the first movie is by Ridley Scott, but the second one is so similar to T2 and done by James Cameron. And after the first two, they kind of fall off.
I was surprised.
They both have a resurgence in at least arguably one movie. We'll get to it because it's one of the categories. I feel like we should break down the categories in which we make our decision on.
Absolutely. You want to go through all 5 or just go one by one?
I think we go through 5 and then just
Okay.
start going down.
The 5 categories we discussed, and I will agree with you that when I was looking at discussing Terminator, when you suggested Terminator vs. Alien, I didn't realize how similar they had something. So similar. I agree that it's kind of weird. But either way, we had 5 categories. We had the better first film, so that will be just breaking down specifically Alien versus Terminator. The better first sequel, Aliens versus Terminator 2. The what I call the best of the rest.
That was a good one. That was a good one.
We have the best star power. And one of my favorite categories to think about would be the best future. Which franchise would have the best future? So let's break it down with let's go right to number 1 and see what happens between us. The better first film. On one side, you have Alien, directed by Ridley Scott, versus Terminator, directed by James Cameron. Both completely different beasts from the rest of the franchises. They're both almost more horror films,
definitely,
than they are action films per se.
Much more contained,
self-contained story. Much for not as big of a budget. It's very much a low-key
practical effects.
And they both have had long-lasting legacies.
And a really, really strong female hero that gets put in the middle.
2 of the most iconic females. If there was a holy trinity of action / strong female action / horror leads, it would be Sigourney Weaver in Aliens. It would be Linda Hamilton in Terminator. Although in the first Terminator, Linda Hamilton was not quite the Linda Hamilton we eventually know is in T2. She gets become the more badass in T2.
Well, you could say the same thing about Alien and Aliens.
That's true. That's true.
She kind of she get away from her, you bitches, in Alien.
That's true. That's a good point. That's a good point.
And the villain, Arnold, is one of the most iconic. I still call him a villain, one of the most iconic villains. Now we know him as the hero, as the Terminator. But in the first one, he's an iconic villain. And we have an alien, which is alien. That's
the Queen Alien.
One of the most
definitely most iconic at this point.
That's right.
It's very interesting about Terminator doing that, though, about how it's got to be the only franchise where the villain of the first film was like one of the heroes of the remaining films. It's kind of a strange dynamic. Anyway, just to touch base on my Holy Trinity, Jamie Lee Curtis would be my third hit that Holy Trinity, in case anybody was wondering. But beyond that, so if I had
T1 or Alien,
T1 or Alien, I think I have to pick Alien, and here's why.
I'm going the same way
because Alien is a more iconic film. It's one that's some people have called it the most terrifying film of all time. Some people consider
that. Right.
I think it's got a little more of the terror and tone that you were looking for. Whereas Terminator 1 was a brilliant storyline, but I feel James Cameron was more experimenting with where he wanted to go with the world building. Wasn't quite as solid. Where Ridley Scott didn't need anything with the world building. He waited until a long time later to do the world building. It was such a more self-contained story. But it also kind of came across better as far as I think it's held up better as far as special effects go, as far as storyline tempo goes. Terminator 1 is far from a bad movie. Let me tell you, it's an iconic. Yeah. But I think Alien has to take the slight nod for being a little bit more of an iconic starting point to a franchise.
I echo everything you said. Actually, my notes are like crazily similar, and there's also like personal bias that goes into this. I just enjoy watching Alien more, which is weird because T1 is more of an action movie than Alien is, even though they're both in the horror genre. But I feel like Alien, I don't know, it feels grittier. It feels more raw but in a good way.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I definitely can agree with that. So I think it's an easy go for us at this point.
So that's one. Oh, actually, that's 2-0.
Then 2-0 Alien
for the Alien franchise.
So we're gonna say Alien on that. I like that.
So the next category will be better first sequel. So in this case, we'll be comparing T2 against Aliens, and now I gotta give all the credit to T2 in this. The movie is absolutely bonkers good. Gives us one of the best all-time heroes and also one of the best villains. And then there's Aliens. Aliens is my top 5 movie of all time. There's just no denying that Aliens is... It feels like a more ambitious movie with way more characters. And it's just James Cameron using all of his, I don't know, his best features. And I'm giving this to Aliens.
Interesting. I will say that this is probably the most interesting topic. Well, I don't know if the most interesting. One of the most interesting topics I've discussed about it, because both films are James Cameron. Is James Cameron entry into the Aliens franchise, which, by the way, I would like to note, I would love to see Ridley Scott try a Terminator film now. Just maybe not now, but back in the day, would have been an interesting choice to see him taking on almost the horror aspect of a Terminator film. But that's something we have to discuss later on, I think. But it's interesting to hear you say you're giving it to Aliens, because I have to say, I have to give it to Terminator 2. And
it makes sense. I figured you were going to.
The reason being is, like we said before, how Alien is such an iconic film in the like the most horrifying film ever, whatever ever existed. That's what Terminator 2 is. Terminator 2 is considered by many to be the greatest action film.
Yep, it is,
of all time. It has great moments in it, but it's very much in line with the Terminator as it had been laid down by Terminator 1. Alien to Aliens, I think there was much more of a shift in tone. That's partially because it's from Ridley Scott to James Cameron, whereas Terminator 1 goes from James Cameron to James Cameron. So I almost feel like if I had to knock Aliens in any way, which I can, I would watch that movie any day of the week, trust me. But it is more of a Terminator film in there than an Alien film to a degree. It's less horror, much less horror, and more all-out action. But I think Cameron does it better. It's almost like Aliens was a warm-up act for what he wanted to do with his action sequences in Terminator 2. Like, there's a lot of action sequences, but he kind of perfected.
I hear you. I don't agree.
Okay. That's fine. That's why we're discussing it. There's the action cat back.
And I feel like in Aliens, like T2 is a sci-fi movie set in a real world. In the real world, though, it's the world we know. It's present day in that time. Aliens is far into the future. It's so technologically advanced. This gives James Cameron so many toys to play with. And he comes up with some of the most iconic shit that he keeps using in his movies after this. Let's take the mech. Now, the mech, that is an iconic piece that also gets used in Avatar. I think, is it also in The Abyss in a way?
Yeah. There's a brief moment.
Right?
Well, kind of. He kind of goes into it.
It's like a contraption or something.
Yep.
And I feel like, and the guns, the tech, there's so much, and the spaceships. I feel like the spaceships are freaking amazing, and sort of, I don't know. I want James Cameron unleashed in the sci-fi world more than in the present day.
Now you say mech. What does that remind you of?
What is it?
A Terminator.
I see what you did there.
A little zinger there. No, I don't disagree. I mean, like I said, I can't argue that Aliens is a great movie. I love seeing James Cameron unleashed as well. I just love the fact that it took James Cameron's unleashedness and was able to ground it into a setting of Los Angeles in 1990 or whatever it is, 1997. I can't remember the date now.
Yeah, 97.
Right, 97. But they really are. It's hard for me to say specifically that I love Terminator 2 better than Aliens. It's really a close thing, because every time I bring up a point of Terminator, even in my own mind, I'm kind of like, okay, it has a great action heroine, so does Aliens. It has a great villain, so does Aliens. It has some great action sequences, so does Aliens. So
okay, I got one. Okay. What about supporting cast?
Supporting cast.
The bigger, wider supporting cast.
Well, that's kind of hard to argue, because
I know
more. And
exactly.
It's so, and of course, our boys in it as well. So I mean, Game over, man. Game over.
Now what the fuck we gonna do?
Now what the fuck we gonna do?
Why am I blanking on his name?
Rest of the people. I am too for some reason. Bill.
Yeah, Bill. Jesus.
We are so
I'm totally
fired.
looking this up. No, this is, sometimes you're under the lights. It just sort of gets to you. Bill Pullman. No, not Bill Pullman.
No, Bill Pullman's Independence Day.
Wow, we are so Bill Paxton.
Fired.
Bill Paxton.
That was what it was. I kept thinking Bill Pullman also. I know it was right. We are so fired. Bill Paxton, but he is our boy. One of the greatest supporting actors of all time, and he does raise the stake at Aliens quite a bit, I gotta say.
And Michael Biehn is also amazing in this. Somebody wake up, Hicks. The guy's sleeping in a shuttle.
Well, I will say that if I had to give that, if we're going to break Aliens versus Terminator 2 down, I would probably have to give the supporting cast Aliens. But overall, I will just end my thing saying that Terminator 2 is just a more iconic movie overall, so I have to give it the edge.
Yeah, I'm going Aliens. So this leaves us with 3-1. 2-1.
It is 3-1. 3-1 in favor of the Alien right now. But we are a split decision on this specific category.
That's true.
If anybody has any comments, go ahead, throw them in the comments. We'd like to hear about anybody in the comments. We'll debate you in the comments all day long. So, what's our next category? Or is it
best of the rest? I feel like this is going to be a shorter discussion.
Well, it doesn't have to necessarily. I say best of the rest because it was a catchy phrase. We can just talk about the rest of the franchises in a way. You are right. We talked about this before in that they have similar trajectories. They both went downhill pretty fast as far as the general public conception is aware. They both lost their directors at this point. Alien never had really got back until later on anyway. But they had David Fincher doing Alien 3, but it wasn't the David Fincher we know. It was a very studio interfered with David Fincher, and he's disavowed the film, so it's hard to give him credit for Alien 3. But they had Terminator 3, was also ended up being the same kind of thing, disavowed. I happen to like both Terminator 3 and Alien 3 a little bit better than most people do. I think Alien 3 was a great soft reboot to a degree. We kind of brought it back to basics. It was a local environment. One alien running around. Horror. I thought Sigourney Weaver gave a great performance as Ripley in it. But I also understand some of the points that have been brought up about how it's kind of trashy, how trash is almost in a similar way to what Dark Fate did by killing off Newt. He kind of invalidated the whole end of Aliens in a way, and that kind of thing. Terminator 3, I thought had a ballsy ending, which I liked. It had the ending where basically humans basically lost, which is not something that you really saw from movies at that point. So that would, but whatever reason, they were stumbling blocks.
I think, or if we start counting down all the movies, I think we're going to be here forever.
That's true.
I think we should pick out like which are the movies that stand out to you from the rest.
Okay.
So what would you say the positive? Why are you picking one or the other? Which are you picking anyway? You haven't said.
Which am I picking? The best of the rest. I think I have to go with Alien as the best of the rest. And
why?
The reason why is basically what I said. Like I said, I liked Alien 3 a little bit better than most people did. But more importantly, as much as I liked Dark Fate and as much as I liked what it had to say, it still wasn't James Cameron. James Cameron was involved, but it was definitely Tim Miller's direction. Whereas Ridley Scott found a way to completely reboot the franchise. Whereas we say Terminator Dark Fate, we also said that during our review that Terminator Dark Fate was a soft reboot again of Terminator 1, the same basic storyline. Now, some people hate, and I know this is bad, they hate Prometheus.
There we go. Now we're getting to the stuff. Prometheus.
But I fucking love that film.
Prometheus is one of the best sci-fi movies ever made, in my opinion.
I 110% agree. I think a lot of people didn't like it because they heard about it. I think he tried not to connect it to the Alien franchise before it came out. It was kind of this thing where I was like, well, it's supposed to be an Alien prequel, but it wasn't really talked about. I think the reason why is because it's such a different film. But that's what makes it so good. It's a totally different exploration into the franchise. I wish he had the balls to stick with it. I feel like Alien Covenant after
You're reading my script pretty much. Yeah.
I like Alien Covenant. Don't get me wrong, I love it, but it definitely was more of a soft, kind of like I'm going to pander a little bit to the fans who wanted to see more alien bloodshed and everything else. I wanted to see more about the
engineers.
I wanted to see more about that.
That could have been a sci-fi movie all on its own. It didn't even have to be an alien movie, but the fact that he reinvented the Alien franchise with that like creator storyline, that was something completely different. That's something that the Terminator Dark Fate needed, but didn't do. They just rehashed. But really, Scott came up with a totally new crew, for example, and a totally new storyline to support that.
So, absolutely. And you had Michael Fassbender.
Michael Fassbender's David is
one of my favorite characters of all time, to be honest with you. I love him
absolutely much. So. David is right after Ellen Ripley, the best character in my opinion.
I don't disagree at all. I might be a tarred and feather for this. I almost consider him almost equal. I can almost say it. He's not quite as iconic, but just personal favorites. I would love to see a film about David again at this point. So.
Yeah, same here.
So
that's both of us going to Alien.
Wow, this is surprisingly going a different way than I thought I kind of first envisioned when I initially started thinking about the subject. But
wait.
Next category is best star power, which we were kind of just actually discussing. It was a great little transition there. We didn't even know it. Star power. Which side do you fall on? You have a lot of great. I mean, you take one big star from each franchise. You take the top dog from each franchise.
This is exactly how I approach this category. Take one star,
and it's got to be Arnold versus.
That's it. Sorry, it's game over. It's game over, man.
Game over, man.
It's Arnold. It's he is the Terminator. The Terminator is him. I almost talk like Arnold. I can't pronounce. So I think it's just clear cut.
And I think it's clear cut about that. It's the top dog is actually honestly, definitely clear cut. Because the best way you could say it is every Terminator film where Arnie's been in is significantly better than the films that he wasn't involved in. Whereas with Ripley, as much as I love Ripley, again, Prometheus was a top-notch film, had nothing to do with Ripley, and it still worked out pretty well, I think. So I would definitely give top dog to Terminator on that.
Yeah, not to take away from the female heroes. They're
not at all.
Some of the best and iconic. But because I'd say Ripley and
Sarah
Connor, they balance each other out. Like I couldn't pick who's better.
Right.
But then there's Arnold. So and it tips.
That's a very strong point. I don't want to ever get on the side of. I mean, the female heroes. These are iconic female heroes. Something we need more of in this world today. We're getting better about it. I think we're starting to find our footing with that. But these are two icons. Again, you said it perfectly right. Sarah Connor and Ripley are both such iconic characters together. You have to have some kind of balance tip over, and Arnold is that tip over. But with that being said, you brought it up in your Aliens versus Terminator 2 review. The better supporting cast overall throughout the years, I have to give that to Aliens. Because you have Bill Paxton, you have Michael Biehn, you have Winona Ryder in Alien Resurrection, you have like Charles Dance and Charles S. Dutton in Alien 3, you have Michael Fassbender in the Prometheus. You also have Prometheus and Alien Covenant had a couple of different characters, like that comedian who I forget his name too, Danny McBride. A lot of more. Whereas in Terminator, it's not been quite the same. You do have Christian Bale in Salvation. You have your boy Sam Worthington. I don't know about that.
Boy Sammy W.
But I don't know. But so I don't know if that.
I don't know about that.
I don't know about that at all.
But I don't know. What is this guy doing?
So, what do you think about does that enter into your realm?
Honestly,
still give it to.
I honestly like Arnold just steamrolls everyone else. Just steamrolls because he's way more iconic than any of the other supporting cast. Like I know it's unfair, but the star power of Arnold is. It transcends everything else. I feel like that's why it's so clear cut for me.
Last point of that, I will say also, and I agree with you. I'm going to say Terminator as well. Last point I'll agree with you is that despite all the characters I mentioned, actors I mentioned, none of those actors are known for their aliens roles. You don't think about Winona Ryder as in Alien Resurrection. You don't think about Michael Fassbender too much as Prometheus as much as you do, like, say, Magneto or something like that. So I'll give it to you as well. Terminator is the way to go. So last segment, best future of the franchise. And this is something I wanted to deep dive into. AMA said they wanted to kill the franchise. They didn't get into this. And I get why you want to kill Terminator. I get that after it did Dark Fate. And it would be a fine conclusion in the franchise. But I wanted to explore what we had to do if we had to go to the future and which one has the best possibility. I will argue. I'm not going to say I got to go through this real quick. Terminator has one possibility of future in my mind. If they're going to do anything more in the future at this point, they have to almost reboot Salvation. We are done with the storyline of Terminators coming back and saving the day that way. We need to let's see the war again, and they have that. That's why Salvation is a great concept. That we're seeing the future war, we're finally getting into the nitty gritty. Let's get in present time. Let's see this battle. Just don't have Sam Worthington in it, and then we'll be fine. Or a better conception. But I think that's what, if we're going to go future, that's what Terminator has to do. Whereas Alien, I think we already have the future. I think that's Ridley Scott's already started that future. And if you just come back and commit to it a little bit more, we could have a brilliant spin-off franchise that, if done right, we could actually
we could make new ground.
Right. Exactly. That's my point. Go ahead.
He went somewhere so dangerous with where did life come from? Yeah. He pretty much that's what he started with Prometheus. And that's something it's such a simple idea, but everyone will be hooked when you float that idea around. And the way he did it with the engineers, such mystical characters. I want to know so much more about them.
Right.
I don't want to know too much. I want them to stay this sort of like Boba Fett type of like thing, to just have them in the backdrop of the story.
Right.
But then do something. Yeah. I feel like, Ridley Scott started something with a new idea. I haven't. Okay, McGee started it with Salvation, but that I'm going Alien again just because of how brilliant of an idea he came up with for the future.
I agree, and I think Alien has more. Whereas Alien 3 was a reboot of Alien 1, soft reboot of Alien 1, like I said, even if you went back to current day, I feel like there's more you can do with the Alien story than you can with the Terminator story. Because Terminator, if you're going present day, it's always going to be that same thing. It's a Terminator coming back. It's somebody coming back to save him. Alien, you can always find different routes. You could bring aliens to Earth. You could bring You could bring a whole colony. I mean, there's so many different options.
That's exactly it.
So I think Alien has the brighter future. I think we could see more Alien films. Maybe Terminator can be reborn by having a Terminator versus Aliens movie, just like our franchise.
I think actually, like, and I know this is a very dangerous topic and people might hate me on this, but I think you continue doing sequels for the Alien, but if you want to take Terminator into the future, you could reboot it, like not the same story, just think of a newer storyline set in the present day. Okay. Don't have any of the John Connor or T-800 mythos. Sort of change that, but I feel like rebooting Terminator might be a better option.
Could be. Oh. But
I know rebooting is always gets this reaction.
Yeah,
exactly what you just did.
I'll say quickly that I am not one who ever is against rebooting. I say, if you want to reboot something, reboot it, because we always have the original. It's a chance to get a better movie. Then let's do it. Will it suck? It might suck. It might be the worst thing in the world. But you know what? I can just watch it and toss it over my shoulder and go back and watch Terminator 1 again if I wanted to. So give it a shot. What the hell? And as sometimes improving, sometimes rebooted franchises will be rebooted and then scrapped, and then the originals will still come back, like, say, Ghostbusters. Ghostbusters 1 and 2, They tried the 2016 version, didn't work very well. We have a new film coming out with the original cast now.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's never say never. Never say never, and it's always worth seeing what people can do with ideas and franchises. So, that's where we end up.
It feels like a commanding win by the Alien franchise now.
According to our votes,
Mm-hmm.
Alien wins 7-3. Does that sound right to you?
It does. When I did this, it feels kind of unfair. Maybe when the first thought I have is I know which one's going to win, but when I broke it down, it kind of justifies it. So
I thought it was going to be a lot more equal. I really did. I didn't know. I kind of, every time I kept going, I was like, oh, Alien. I kept trying to even work in my mind, Terminator, where can I make Terminator better? Where is it that Terminator's better in this case? But I kept saying, I gotta go Alien.
I think it's our sci-fi love that comes into it as well, because Alien is more like more futuristic sci-fi. So I think that's something to
be said for that, for sure. I think especially with the Prometheus, I think that's what's tipping it for us right now. I almost as a discussion from our time, I almost wonder if we took Prometheus out of the equation, whether or not how that would tip the balance, so to speak. But that would be a discussion for another time, I think.
Alien wins. Eddie Green's not going to be happy. Sorry, bro.
But James Cameron still has an entry in the Alien franchise, so Eddie Green can hang his hat on that. So, with that being said, we're going to wrap up this show this week. This is our very first episode. I'm excited this happened. This is hopefully everybody else out there loved it as well. If you have any suggestions for ideas you want to do, any comments, like the video, comment on it, give us some ideas, and we'll be happy to tackle them. We have nothing necessarily scheduled yet for next week as far as what we're going to do, but I think I'm kind of audibling on air. I think we're going to probably do Dr. Sleep.
I think so. I think that's
Stephen King related,
and probably do something with horror franchises or
maybe Stephen King adaptations, possibly. We'll have to talk about that and get into that. Hopefully, you will join us for that as well. Richard-Erik Jarvi, where can they find you?
You can find me on Instagram and on Facebook at Richard-Erik with a K Jarvi, and go follow Action Industries on Instagram.
All right, you can find me at Paul _DiNuzzo on Twitter. Give me a like. You can always talk to me. I'm always open for conversations about anything film, especially geek film oriented. And of course, as part of Action Industries, patreon.com/Team Action. Get there. We have a lot of new, exciting, fun, exciting ventures coming. We have reviews of Schmodown matches, which if you don't know, it's a movie trivia show that Ben and Drew are famously a part of and are awesome at. They review every one of their matches. We also have Commanding the Army, the new Patreon game for our upper level patrons, where we get to debate with Ben and Drew and get judged by one of them. We had our first episode just the other night. Jack Nicholson's best roles. We had Ben Bateman arguing against three patrons, and it was a blast. So hopefully that will continue as well. And that is our show for the day. And I guess we'll end like I always end. Court is adjourned.